Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us on War with Iran. We begin with a U.S. official confirming that an F-35 stealth fighter jet is believed to have been hit by Iranian fire, forced to make an emergency landing. It's believed to be the first time an American military aircraft was hit by enemy fire over Iran, raising questions about how the jet, invisible to radar, was spotted. And it comes as Iran ramps up attacks targeting oil and gas across the Middle East, as President Trump calls for $200 billion to help American troops beyond the war in Iran, calling it a small price to pay. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce leads us off.
Tonight, the Pentagon preparing to ask Congress for an additional $200 billion to fund the war in Iran. A massive number Secretary Pete Hegseth says might not even be final.
I think that number could move, obviously. It takes money to kill bad guys.
The request comes 3 weeks into the war. The Pentagon says the first week alone cost more than $11 billion. President Trump has said it will end soon. So today, reporters asking why he needs so much more money for this fight.
The war is almost over. Why is the Pentagon going to ask Congress for an additional $200 billion?
Well, we're asking for a lot of reasons beyond even what we're talking about in Iran. This is a very volatile world.
On Capitol Hill, the $200 billion request catching many members of Congress off guard. The president launched this war without seeking their approval. Now lawmakers from both parties demanding details before they write that check.
They need to come clean with the American people before they ask for $200 billion.
The president didn't consult American allies before going to war either. Today, as Trump welcomed Japan's prime minister to the Oval Office, a Japanese reporter asking why Japan wasn't given a heads up. Trump's response shocking the prime minister as he invoked Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor.
Why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us.
The Japanese prime minister sitting there watching as the president spoke.
Because of that surprise.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce. Iran escalating attacks and possibly striking a fighter jet for the first time as they also attack Israel's largest oil refinery. The all-out multinational war breaking out in the Middle East. Here's Chief International Correspondent James Longman.
Tonight, for the first time since the war in Iran began, a U.S. stealth fighter jet is believed to have been hit by enemy fire. Tonight, sources tell ABC News an Air Force F-35 stealth fighter was flying a combat mission over Iran when it was hit. Sources say the pilot is in a stable condition tonight after landing at a U.S. base in the region. The incident raises immediate questions about how a U.S. stealth fighter, nearly invisible to radar, could have been hit by hostile fire, potentially by the Iranians. An urgent investigation is now underway. And tonight, amid the shock over global oil prices and gas prices in the United States, Iran is intensifying its attacks on major energy facilities across this region, fueling even more uncertainty. Smoke billowing from Israel's largest oil refinery after it was hit by Iranian missile debris, in video circulating online. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait hit yet again. Iran's retaliation comes after Israel bombed its section of the world's largest gas field. Overnight, President Trump denied any knowledge of Israel's decision to strike it, but an Israeli source tells ABC News, quote, all Israeli targets in Iran are aligned with the United States. The president was pressed today if he spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu about that Israeli attack.
I told him, don't do that, and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. You know, we do, we're independent, we get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
Late today, Netanyahu said Israel would stop striking Iran's oil infrastructure at President Trump's request. And just 2 days after a top U.S. intelligence official resigned, saying there was no immediate threat from Iran, today Netanyahu denied Israel pressured the U.S. into this war.
That is that Israel somehow dragged the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on.
Tonight, the escalating attacks are rattling global oil prices. In the US, a gallon of gas has skyrocketed 97 cents since the president launched the war. It's now averaging $3.91 a gallon. The president today vowed to do what it takes to lower oil prices, again calling the war a, quote, excursion to stop Iran. The president suggested he thought gas prices would have been even worse.
I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
And tonight, in an effort to secure the Strait of Hormuz, the US destroyed multiple Iranian Navy ships, saying they were threatening international shipping. And in another sign of this widening conflict in Lebanon tonight, the horrific moment caught on camera as an Israeli airstrike exploded just feet away from a Russia Today correspondent. RT posting this video. The journalist suffered shrapnel wounds. RT claims Israel fired on the reporter's vehicle on purpose. Israel claims it was targeting a bridge in the south used by Hezbollah.
Our thanks to James Longman for that report. The Lebanese Ministry of Health says more than 900 people have been killed since the conflict escalated earlier this month. Officials say at least 111 of the dead are children, and more than 2,000 people have been wounded. Meanwhile, the World Food Program is warning the war could push global hunger to record levels if the conflict continues to destabilize the world economy. ABC News Live first anchor Diane Macedo spoke with an executive at the World Food Program earlier today. Let's take a listen.
Oil trading hit up to $115 a barrel overnight. How are high fuel prices affecting your operations?
Look, when fuel goes up, food goes up in price. We are seeing already impacts across the Middle East, but also the Far East and across the Horn of Africa. We know full well that when oil stays above $100 a barrel, things start to go wrong when it comes to humanitarians' ability to provide enough food to people who are in acute food insecurity around the world. We're predicting that if this level of cost remains above $100 a barrel up until June, we know that 45 additional million people will face acute and severe food insecurity. So this really is a horrific level of food insecurity. And we know we are not ready financially to respond to this level of need.
What is World Food Program doing to keep operations running?
So in Lebanon, more than 1 million people have been displaced since this war started. 15% of the territory of the country is being flattened every day, and people are being told to evacuate because of the level of destruction taking place. What we are doing right now is feeding and supporting 250,000 of those displaced people, and we are trying to scale that up every day. We're doing that with hot meals provided at shelters around the country where the Shia majority from the south are being forced to stay. We're providing cash support to individual families that we've identified that have been displaced and have lost their homes. But fundamentally, this problem is going to be a very big and long one if the destruction continues at the level we've seen. Broadly in the region, we're also scaling up operations to help Afghan refugees around Iran or in Iran. We're supporting refugees who are fleeing from Iran. We're supporting continued needs in Syria and obviously in Gaza and parts of the West Bank as well. So our operations are continuing. We've got people across the entirety of the region. But when you're talking about trillions of dollars potentially being spent on a war, our gaps are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're just not there to help support people who are facing a humanitarian food insecurity catastrophe.
You've led World Food Program operations across the Middle East and East Africa. How are countries not directly involved in this war being impacted by it?
As I've said, when the price of fuel goes up, the price of food goes up. We are already starting to see a food access crisis as families just can't afford what's there. What we are also concerned about is that as time goes on, with limitations of shipments out of the Straits of Hormuz, the availability of fertilizer to countries that desperately need it to keep their production yields high enough to feed their populations, that will also be impacted. So over time, we'll start seeing a food availability crisis as well, because they just won't be growing enough. It's a broadening crisis because so many countries which already have millions of people in need are going to suffer from the broader ripple effect of this crisis.
So what are your biggest concerns as this war escalates?
Its continuance. The doomsday scenario is that Iran itself starts to fail in its ability to feed its own people and look after its own people. There's 92 million people in Iran. If we need to help them as well in a war scenario, then you're talking about adding enormous pressure on the international humanitarian community that right now would be extraordinarily hard to do. We need to seek for ceasefire. We need to seek for a de-escalation in this crisis, not just for the people of Iran, for the people of Israel, for the people in this region, but also for the greater region that is being impacted by the secondary impact, the secondary effects of this war.
Coming up, we meet the Afghan refugees and family members of active duty military living on an unused military base in Qatar, which has become a target in the war. Welcome back. Last year, President Trump suspended refugee relocation and resettlement efforts overseas, citing the need to focus on national security. But now, in the midst of the war in Iran, many are left in limbo. In secret, refugees shared recordings with ABC News, exposing conditions at an unused U.S. military base. ABC's Tom Sophie Burridge has their stories.
Are you fearing for your lives at the moment?
Of course we do, of course.
Underneath the starlight, the sound of missiles overhead. Qatar armed forces have been intercepting incoming attacks towards an unused US military base in Doha, the base becoming a key target since the US, Israel and Iran war began. And living at the base in a refugee camp called Asaliya are more than 1,000 Afghan refugees and immediate family members of active duty US military, according to a US non-profit called Afghan Evac. All of its residents were relocated to the base by the US. Many say they have been stranded for over a year due to the Trump administration halting relocation and refugee resettlement efforts. And since the Iran war broke out, many at the base have shared their fears that they could become the next target.
Every night we see above us in the sky all the children, the women, they are scared.
Since the beginning of the conflict, every night we hear the sound of missiles, impacts and explosions that explode above our camp, and their fragments fall onto residential buildings.
In secret, people at the camp have shared video diaries and voice memos with ABC News, detailing the dire situation at the camp, explaining to us that debris from missiles have fallen into their living quarters. ABC News was sent this photo from one refugee who shows a massive hole in the ceiling of their housing. They asked for their faces to be hidden and their voices altered out of fear of being deported or reprimanded.
You can see the situation. This is our room and this is our shelter. One of my son is laying down behind the bed. He is sleeping. Every 2 hours or 3 hours, the missile is coming and explosion above us. Some of debris and some of parts of missile hits our buildings. Thankfully, there is no loss and no injuries.
Residents say they have been hiding in buildings during attacks and said they were not initially given bunkers or proper protections to take cover. Now, 3 weeks later, ABC News received these videos where residents show us that the camp installed new concrete walling near the entrances and exits of buildings. Workers urging residents to take the bunkers in event of a duck and cover alert.
My little daughter, she's feeling scared. Please, we request you help us.
We spoke to refugees who said they also serve for the US military and are now caught in another war they didn't ask to be a part of. I spoke with a young mother who shared what it's like to raise her young child on the base with their future uncertain.
It's actually heartbreaking raising my firstborn. I think her first life steps are all in this camp, in a restricted area. She was not even 1 when I came here, and now she's turned 2. Raising my daughter in this environment is very difficult. I'm not able to always provide her with the food she needs or even what she wants, the toys she loves. Sometimes when the children are playing outside and when we suddenly hear the explosion, the families run after their children and bringing them inside. And some of the children are screaming and crying, "What's happening? Are we gonna die?"
Have parts of the camp been damaged by drones or missiles during the war?
One of the debris just fell into our neighbor's room that they had children in. I lived through a legal process organized by the United States government, which transferred me from Kabul to Qatar. We were given hope for safety, the opportunity to build our lives.
Like this young mother, many we spoke with also told us they left Afghanistan legally after the US withdrew in 2021. And this situation brings them back to those terrifying moments. For serving the country and risking their lives during Taliban rule, they say the US government promised them a new life in America. And that promise has been broken.
I was a member of Afghan Commando Forces alongside American forces in Afghanistan. I fight shoulder to shoulder for the freedom and against the terrorism. I have been living here from last 18 months in the camp.
A teenager who lives with her parents on the base shared her story, her fears with us.
We came from a country that was under war for 48 years. Before coming in Qatar, we were living under Taliban government and we were living in constant fear and anxiety. Every 2 months, we changed the place of our living so that their identities would not be exposed. As you know, the school doors were closed to girls and I was deprived of education for 5 years. I feel hopeless because I am deprived of education and whose future is uncertain.
Since talking to us, she told ABC News that workers at the camp told refugees not to talk to journalists, and if they did, they could be deported back to Afghanistan. Afghan EVAC has been advocating for refugees in the camp, writing a letter to the State Department asking the government to not leave the people, like the ones we've heard from today, behind. The letter claims that approximately 800 of the individuals at CAS, Camp Asaliya, are fully vetted, approved refugees who were legally cleared for travel to the United States. More than half are women, more than half are children. And many families are vetted and approved for entry to the United States. But the State Department has informed them that by March the 31st, they must permanently relocate to a third country. In an email, the State Department told ABC News that Afghan nationals at the camp do not currently have a viable pathway to the United States and that they plan to relocate the camp's residents by March the 31st, telling us moving the Camp Asaliya populations to a third country is a positive resolution that provides safety for these remaining people to start a new life outside of Afghanistan. Those we spoke with say they still have not been told what country they would be going to or when.
1,100 Afghans are living here at the CAS. We still don't know where we're gonna go.
We are forgotten. Why are we forgotten? We were brought here legally. The promise is broken. And even when our life is in danger, they still don't provide a safe place to us. So how would we hope for the best?
Such a challenging situation. Our thanks to Tom Sufi-Burridge for that report. Coming up here, the war is escalating and so is the price you pay. Gas and oil prices are surging as energy supplies are hit. But just how much? More after the break. In the latest effort to try and ease spiking oil prices, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. is considering lifting sanctions on Iranian oil already at sea. This as nationwide, a gallon of gas is averaging $3.90, up almost $1 since the start of the war. Our Elizabeth Schulze tried to help answer your most searched questions when it comes to the war and energy prices.
Americans want to know what happens if diesel prices go up.
Yeah, we've been talking so much, Alex, about the price that you pay at the gas pump, but this diesel increase has been stunning when you think about the record that it set, the biggest price increase in 2 weeks now that we've seen, above $5 a gallon for diesel. Why that matters is because companies, businesses, industries across the economy pay more for diesel now. So think about your farming equipment, think about construction, think about landscaping. I talked to a moving company that's paying more. It's hard to overstate how much this is really the lifeblood of the American economy. So we're looking at that number so closely because a lot of these businesses did not see that price spike coming. They're now saying, okay, we have a lot bigger costs. How are we going to pay for that? Are they going to absorb it? And a lot of businesses I'm talking to say yes, in the short term, they will try to do that. But the longer this goes on, the more likely it becomes that they might have to pass that down to their customers. So that means you or I could be paying higher prices.
Certainly. Well, in another search question, it's kind of like the trickle-down effect. What goods will cost more because of the Iran war?
Right. So one thing we're looking at beyond just gas prices most immediately is the cost of some key industries that rely on diesel for transportation. So that's where you could see it when you're thinking about your food costs, but also when you're thinking about airfares, those jet fuel costs go up. No, it's not a good, but we are seeing the services sector hit the fastest. So you have airfare, you have Uber rides, you have surcharges for shipping. Think of UPS and FedEx. That's the most immediate place. And those price spikes are already happening. Public transportation could be soon to come too. We could see some of those public transportation fees go up. Then after that, you start getting into the goods prices, which generally take a little bit longer time to filter through. But again, if those transportation costs stay higher, your products that you're shipping and that you're ordering online, those could get more expensive too.
Gotcha. Well, and here's one that I know everybody is curious about, and that's, is this going to affect what I'm able to put on my table? Yes. Will grocery costs become more expensive because of the rising oil prices?
Yeah, and we've already seen this comes on the back of grocery prices up, almost 30% over the past 5 years. So people are already feeling higher prices when they go to the grocery store. It's a little bit daunting to think about those costs going up more. The short answer is that we are likely to see some sort of increase in food because of those higher transportation costs. And then you have this really big kind of unexpected shock to fertilizer costs. So that means a lot of fertilizer shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, as we've been talking about, those shipments are not going through. So products, crops that use a lot of fertilizer, corn, soybeans, think about that, they could become either traders or either farmers could say they're not going to plant those crops because it's more expensive. They're going to turn to something else. That would mean those prices go up, and we have seen those commodity prices go up. That's one place you could see the food costs go up. Generally, when we're talking about food, a lot of the analysts I've been checking in with say it's about 4 to 6 weeks from the initial price shock in oil. We are now almost 4 weeks into this, so the amount of time it takes could come upon us pretty soon, where we're seeing a little bit of increment when you see about food prices. Though I will just add, I asked the Fed chair about this yesterday. He said, we're watching it. We just don't know. There's so many wild cards when you're thinking about the big picture impact on food, too.
Our thanks to Elizabeth Schulze and Alex Prochet once again for that. That is our show for this half hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you for streaming with us.